So good morning. I'm Debbie Lacey, the founder of Eastside for All, a race and social justice advocacy organization focused on local systemic change here in East King County. And of course, systems are made up of people. Our relationships are the vehicles for change. So to encourage more open connections, if you can, please have your cameras on. That will help us provide a warm welcome to our speakers and all of our guests here today. Let us begin with an acknowledgement of this region, the land, and the First Peoples. The Puget Sound region and East King County lie on the unceded and ancestral land of the Coast Salish, the Duwamish, Muckleshoot, Puyallup, Snoqualmie, Stillaguamish, and the Suquamish people. We honor and give thanks to the First Peoples past, present, and future, and to the land itself. Let us all recognize also that acknowledgements such as this one are not replacements for authentic relationship building and the practice of centering the needs and contributions of our Indigenous communities. When we hear land acknowledgements, let's take that as a signal to ask ourselves, what have we done recently to learn more, to listen, and to connect with our Indigenous community members in ways that center them and their voices? As we show slides, if you want to see more of the speaker, you can select speaker view at the top right of your Zoom screen. It should be there. Different options for you to view today's event. And there's also a slider that you can move to reduce the size of the slide that's appearing so you can see more of the speaker if you'd like. So I'm very grateful for a group of local leaders who formed in the summer of 2019. The Enterprise Welcoming Group, as people of color serving our small business communities and advocating for equity in economic development, we collaborate together to promote more equitable investments and practices. In just a moment, you'll be hearing from some of the other co-founders of the Enterprise Welcoming Group. Today, we're highlighting just some of the efforts led by communities of color, including those who have long histories providing important services and information to small business owners in their communities, and calling on local leaders to increase investments and resources. Please join me in welcoming and thanking them for their contributions. They'll each just have a brief time to share, and you can learn more about them from a resource directory that we'll be sharing. To our presenters, please feel free to post your website link or any contact information that you'd like in the chat after you share. And my apologies in advance if I need to interrupt any of you. I'll try to do that as gently as possible, but we want to make sure we give equal time to all of our wonderful speakers today and really appreciate your support. So I'm going to check first and see if we have Felix Ngusu here from Seattle Business Education Hub.
Yeah, my name is Felix Ngusu, and I am the director and founder of Seattle Business Education Hub. Our organization mission is to assist families and individuals to be financially literate. We provide also a business education to minority-owned businesses that need assistance understanding how to start, grow, and expand their business. We work with many organizations to help this category of people understand how to build a strong financial background and how to create jobs for themselves. We went from the principle that any person who is financially literate will start a business that can stay over 3 years. Because the reason many businesses fail during the first 2 years is more related to the financial management, financial understanding. And we wanted to call on the community, on the authorities, to help provide financial literacy to different areas such as high schools, college, people living in low-income housing, and also homeless people to understand the saving behavior, the money management, and to fix their credit so that they can come back to the society as active citizens. This is all our call to you who is listening to me, that we need your help so that we can work in Eastside to reduce poverty and to increase people who have confidence on what they wanted to start for their life. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Felix. Thank you for being here today. So up next, we have Lalitha Upala from Indian American Community Services, and she is one of the co-founders of the Enterprise Welcome Group I mentioned earlier. Lalitha?
Hello, everyone. I am Lalitha Upala, and I'm the Executive Director for India Association of Western Washington, here to talk about the different services and the work that we do with our small business community. The pandemic, as we know, has already caused a massive dislocation to small businesses. More than 40% of our mom and pop businesses have already closed down temporarily due to COVID, with reduction in revenue or lesser demand or simply employee health concerns and a disruption in the supply chain. Majority of the businesses that closed down are personal wellness, beauty parlors, arts, clothing, entertainment, and other small businesses. Well-designed, sustainable economic and public health policy measures are really needed at this time to rejuvenate the small business, mom and pop economy. There is extreme distrust among the small businesses of color in federal loans and forgiveness quotient of the loans and the complicated eligibility rules, which make these small businesses back off even when they are approached with opportunities for relief grant measures. Streamlining of the application process and technical assistance, clarifying eligibility criteria, as well as forgiveness for loans may increase the take-up rate of federal state loan programs, which means the trustee network of the community-based organizations need to be the direct assistance providers here. Small businesses like tourism industries cannot last longer than a few months at this rate. The larger economic benefits that are really needed from policies that can shorten these economic crises through short-term containment policies are much needed. Lastly, one critical innovative approach that we in our small business support services and community-based organizations are looking at is really creating these welcoming centers in financial lending institutions, where a small business can walk into a financial lending institution, find a welcome center that speaks to their language and their culture, and can provide that one-on-one assistance to help the small business feel comfortable and trust the approach of applying for these relief grant measures or loans. And this is again where community-based organizations can play a very significant role in educating or collaborating with our financial lending institutions. So our approach at IAWW, or India Association of Western Washington, is really to invent these innovative practices by working with our small businesses and hearing them out and establishing that trust, and then taking their voice to the government, to the financial lending institutions that will then hopefully empower them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lalitha. Thanks for being here. And next up, we have Doc Wilson from Peace Peloton. Doc, go ahead, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. Hey, everyone. My name is Doc Wilson. I'm the Executive Director with Peace Peloton. Our mission is economic reform for Black people. And what that really means is our aim is to promote a culture of holistic wealth and health among Black humans. And we do that through 3 of our active programs. One is Fresh Air. It's a bike ride that explores Black businesses in the city. Our Makers Market happens every 3rd Saturday and Wednesday of the month, and that promotes Black creators and makers. And our Barbecue Bites and Beer is an opportunity for us to rotate through different barbecue and beer establishments in the city, so that cyclists can start to become acclimated with these organizations. Two of the programs that are on the horizon for us is our Access program. That's a professional development program that will launch the first quarter of 2022. And that will, our pilot program will help develop kids in coding space. They'll be learning Python. And we're also going to be launching a loyalty program that's going to launch the first quarter of next year as well to help bolster repatronage for Black-owned businesses. One of the things I would like to ask people to do, and folks come and ask me all the time what we can do to support, is you can consider Black-owned products and service offerings to add to your portfolio of shopping options. And for government leaders, you can identify with organizations who are doing the work on the ground successfully and support those organizations through grants, loans, referrals, or what have you. So thank you for your time. I appreciate you and hope to see you out on the bike trail soon.
There we are. All right. So pleased to be able to welcome Ms. Namaka Agbo, who is the CEO of the Kataly Foundation and Managing Director of the Restorative Economies Fund. With a background in community organizing, electoral campaigns, policy and advocacy work on racial, social, and environmental justice issues, Namaka is deeply committed to supporting projects that build resilient, healthy, and self-determined communities rooted in shared prosperity. And I have shared, it was just a thrill of my year to be able to meet Namaka personally one-on-one last week. And we're just so thrilled and grateful to have you with us today. Namaka lives in Oakland. Please welcome Namaka, and know that unfortunately we're not able to do our other format today, but if we were, you'd see everybody giving you lots of warm hand waves. So welcome.
Thank you so much for the warm welcome, Debbie, and thanks to everybody for focusing in on what we're here to do today. I think what we just experienced is part of the challenges that we may experience as we try to figure out how do we create economic systems that really meet the needs of communities. And so the ability to regroup and to confront challenges, I think, is part of what we will all be kind of calling on as we lean into this work. Debbie, I'll also, just like as a sidebar, let me know when and how I need to wrap up my comments. Feel free to give me a verbal warning, because I'm going to try to keep it short, given that our time has shifted a bit. Great. So I'll drop the link to my website in the chat box in a moment. And if you're curious to know a bit more about my background, the organizing work that I come from, and my leadership role at the Kataly Foundation and working as the managing director of the Restorative Economies Fund, happy to invite you all to kind of Google it on the website. I'm just going to kind of go into my comments. So today marks the 10th anniversary of the Occupy Wall Street movement. And this is a moment in our history where we saw people, young and old, from a number of different backgrounds, go out into the streets and take over their town squares, their open spaces, in order to reclaim the idea of the commons, in order to engage in practices of deep and direct democracy, and to challenge the systems that plunged us into the Great Recession that precipitated that direct action. And they also came together to build, right? And so for me, Occupy Wall Street was the first time that I had heard a commonly held analysis and critique that we tend to hold in the abolition movement, in naming that the current systems we have now will not save us, nor were they ever designed to. Whether we're looking at the collapse of our public health infrastructure under the weight of the pandemic, whether we're looking at the inequalities of our public education system, which we've seen intensify through the digital divide that's been highlighted in this moment, as we all kind of, those of us that have the privilege to work from home, or in looking at the climate change crisis, where some have been able to flee to hotels or go to other locations in order to escape hurricanes or fire seasons, which have left others behind. What we know to be true is that the majority of the systems that we have relied on have continued to fail us. And these systems have actually functioned in truth as they were designed to. They were actually never designed to serve all of us. And the magic trick in what we're experiencing now that's currently underway is that, in one hand, we have structured our society through a sleight of hand, where we have taught people to kind of look at our values and our ideologies of democracy and focus it on the one hand on our left-hand side. While the other hand, the right hand behind our back, is the hand that's closed. It's the hand that's covering the secret. It's the hand that is actually holding the reins to our political economy and holding it hostage by a minority, a few wealthy individuals and extreme conservatives that seek to maintain power and social order. So we've been taught about the values of democracy. We've been taught about the values of equity, justice, and liberation, but they actually have not been embedded or practiced within the systems that we currently have. And so for me personally, this means that there's no reforming those systems that were never designed for us. This means that we actually have to build the systems and the societies that truly center our collective liberation, that function to honor our collective power, and that meet the needs and the well-being of all of us, where all of us can live well together. What we also know to be true is that building is hard work. It requires us to move from a stance of constant critique and finger pointing, and rather have the self-awareness to turn the finger back on ourselves and say, what can I do? Where can I build? Am I willing to do the actual material, hard and challenging and imperfect work? Or knowing that I'll most likely make some mistakes along the way, but knowing that the work in practicing these new systems and building these new structures that reflect our humanity and honor our dignity is actually what we're here to do. This and many shifts and changes in my life have brought me to create the restorative economics framework. It's the framework that I use to guide what I'm building, where I'm organizing people, the experiments that I'm running, and it's also been the framework that I've used to hold me in making mistakes so that I have the ability to take accountability, learn from my mistakes, and then be able to innovate, iterate, learn, and start building something new. And so I will quickly go to my screen share. What I'd like to do is just briefly give you all an overview of the framework. I'm going to speak really fast. But essentially, the restorative economics framework was something that I designed as I was coming out of electoral organizing, community organizing, and doing policy advocacy work. And I designed it as a tool to guide my consulting practice. As I was really clear, I wanted to be doing the work of equitable community-led development. And that required me to hold a standard and a practice of my values for justice, equity, and liberation and how I go about that work. And so what I know to be true is that we're in a moment of trying to actually move out of systems that prioritize extraction of natural resources, exploitation of labor, and start to move towards systems that are focused in on regeneration, shared prosperity, and practices of deep inclusion. And when we bring all of these values and practices together, I think we have the opportunity to actually figure out what a restorative economy could look like. And so for me, restorative economics is very much rooted in a racial justice analysis and a gender justice analysis, with an understanding that the large inequality that we see today has been created off of a genocide of Indigenous people and stolen land. And so thank you, Debbie, for the land acknowledgement to start us off. Also the exploitation of labor, of people who have been stolen from Africa and enslaved. And we could go on, right? And so in order to actually create a more just and equitable economy going forward, we have to figure out how do we provide opportunities to heal from that harm, and understand that when we actually heal those communities and make them whole by first acknowledging the hurt and harm that has happened and then reinvesting in those communities so that they can actually be part of the conversation, how we create a more equitable economy going forward, is part of the work that we're here to do. What I've observed and seen is that while many of us are, will say that we are committed to the values of racial justice, what it actually means is that we have to do the work of being in relationship with community and providing these communities with the resources that they need. Anything short of that means that we are actually creating a more unequal community, because we currently know that low-income communities of color don't have the skills, don't have the leisure time, the flexible capital to be able to engage in creative conversations around how we're restructuring our economy. So restorative economics is more or less a transition to how we get towards a more just and equitable economy. And it's an opportunity for us to pause and reflect and intentionally repair the economic hurt and harm that's been done to communities of color. And so for me, the theory of liberation that I work within is that I support community stewarded projects. So I'm interested in supporting projects, whether they are community governed loan funds, like the example of Sea Commons, Boston Ujima, or the Real People's Fund, or equitable economic development projects like the East Bay Permanent Real Estate Cooperative or the Guild. We're really trying to figure out what are the creative ways that people are coming together to collectively own the assets that they know are important to their community. And so being very explicit about the legal entity structuring and being clear that we want to start to create more mechanisms that allow people to directly financially benefit from the businesses, from the local economies that they're creating. Right now, we continue to have an economic system that prioritizes wealth and riches to individuals or to corporations. We need to be more intentional about how we're creating that collective community wealth building. And then within that, these projects then create the opportunity for us to come together and actively practice democracy. I'm based out of Oakland, California. We just went through a recall election. And what we know to be true is that democracy is not just about going out and casting your vote in every election, which I do think we should all vote if we can. But democracy is also about showing up and being an active daily steward in your community. And so these community development projects present an opportunity for us to come together to figure out, how do we share these goods and resources with one another? How do we make decisions that center the needs of those that are most impacted in a way that ensures that we're all better off? A person that I look up to, Angela Glover Blackwell, who's the founder of PolicyLink, refers to this as the curb cut effect. Right. And so really being able to identify that when the American Disabilities Act was passed in the 70s, one of the first implementation strategies that happened was that urban planners went and cut out the curbs out of sidewalks. And so these curb cuts made it possible for people that were using wheelchairs to more easily access the sidewalk. But what it also did is make the sidewalk more accessible for people that were pushing strollers, for people who were having challenges getting up on the curb. And so how do we start to think about the ways that we structure our society, our economic systems, our economic development policies in a society so that we're making decisions that are centered around those that are most impacted, that need the most support, with an understanding that the rest of us will be better off together. And that within all of that, I always look to support projects that are rooted in the local social movements, right? And so how are these projects coming together to have a movement building strategy that recognizes that while we are building this community center space together, we are also trying to shift the conditions so that these communities that have so oftentimes been locked out and left behind from economic opportunities, right, can be part of building the political, the economic, and the cultural power of their communities. This is where self-determination sits, right? Being able to have access to the resources to make active choices on what we want our lives to look like. And I think we have an opportunity, and I think we have a responsibility to figure out not just what self-determination looks like, but what is our collective determination? And how are we making it possible for there to be more projects, more vehicles for people to experience what it looks like to have choice and agency and access to the resources that we learn how to steward and share together, rather than hoarding and extracting and exploiting from one another. And so I do have a longer version of this deck. I'm happy to, once again, I'll drop the link from my website in the chat box, and there's some other recordings of me giving talks, but I will stop screen share and hand it back over to Debbie.
Namaka, thank you so much for your grace and your presence and staying here with us through this morning's incident, but most importantly, for being who you are and for your leadership and pioneering spirit in providing such frameworks for us to benefit from here in our local community and across the region, and I know across the United States and even internationally. And just to our guests listening in today, if you have not gotten enough from Ms. Agbo today, and I'm sure you have not, please do look her up. She's been on multiple podcasts. There are many videos that you can look to see more information from her. And one quick question before I let you go. As I told you when we met, our region is highly diverse, extremely dynamic. There's a great deal of wealth, but there's also a lot of disparities. And I really feel like we are at the beginning stages of the very important conversations on topics that you've raised with us here today. Can you share a little bit about what would be some of the most important things for us to begin well, to enter into these conversations in ways that truly are meaningful and impactful?
Yeah, thanks for that question, Debbie. I'll try to keep the list short, but I think the most essential thing is to start with relationship. One of the things I always appreciate about what I've learned as a community organizer is that the first thing you do as a community organizer is you listen, right? Before you're trying to move people into your campaign or your objective, you get to know who they are as individuals, who they are as community members. And those conversations then also oftentimes highlight for us, yes, the challenges, right? Which unfortunately there are many, but oftentimes people will share the nuggets in there of what the opportunities are and what the assets are. And so rather than starting from a deficient place where everything is wrong and nothing's going right, how do we actually invite people to asset map what is good and great that already exists in our communities? And sometimes these asset maps may be about physical space. Sometimes they may be about cultural practices. And sometimes they may be about relationships, but really reminding people of the richness that already exists. And so our work as those that are committed to creating justice and liberation and doing economic development work is not to break down and rebuild something that is that somebody else created for us. It's to really hone in and honor our authenticity, our wisdom, the riches that exist within our community already. And then how do we augment that in a way that honors those legacy residents that have been in this community, that really celebrates and highlights the practices that we hold together, and that is starting to create practices and systems that are actually truly rooted in our commitments to justice, liberation, and equity. And so I think those are some of the starting places, the conversations. And I know that the pandemic makes that hard. What I try to also really celebrate is that being in an online space and figuring out how we then integrate with offline space is that the online space is actually very accessible for those who can't have access to reliable Wi-Fi and a laptop. And so what does it look like to leverage the accessibility aspect of an online space, particularly for those people that may have disabilities where it's harder for them to get out to a physical site, but they could actually listen into a call or be on something online as a way to start to build relationships. And I think people have been really creative in using the Zoom rooms and using Google Docs and other ways to stimulate relationship building that unfortunately sits online right now. But when we can, being able to get outdoors and celebrate and be together is also extremely important as well. So yeah, that's what I would suggest as a starting place.
Thank you so very much. I know everyone joins me in their gratitude for your time today, and I look forward to continuing to follow you and learn from you. Thank you so, so much. Really appreciate you being here. All right, everyone. Thank you. Thank you for staying with us through a shift in our format and so many things today. I especially want to thank and appreciate our other community leaders who are here today to present. And what we're going to do at this time is go back. We'll go with Sarah first. Thank you, Sarah. Welcome.
Yes, thank you. So I am Sarah So, co-founder of the Ally League, and my co-founder and I have been friends for many years. We live in this area, and Keisha and I wanted to start this business because last year she was experiencing a lot of empathy from her friends and colleagues and acquaintances as a Black woman living in the modern era of racism and what we see in the world. And she really wanted to transform that empathy into action. And so that is really the mission of our company. And the first thing that we did is starting with Black boxes, which are gift boxes curated to contain items from Black-owned businesses. So we do prioritize local vendors, and we have snack boxes and gift boxes that can be fully customized and worked with any context and budget. So I'm happy to work with customers on customizing those options. We're rebuilding our website currently, and we have a bunch of boxes and options that aren't yet released, but will be soon for the holidays. So we're certainly entering holiday planning mode for gift giving, and we're happy to connect on that level. We also have an Ally League fund that we found, a Black-led nonprofit called YP Impact, and they have technology experts. And so through that fund, we provide technology grants to Black-owned businesses that need help with their websites or social media campaigns or things that require that technical expertise. So that fund is described on our website, and I'll put my contact information in the chat, but I'm happy to be here and support this work. Thank you.
I believe Joe from KCLS. Joe, are you still here?
I sure am.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Debbie. So yes, my name is Joe. I'm with the King County Library System. KCLS is a network of 50 public libraries throughout King County, outside of Seattle, which of course is served by our neighboring Seattle Public Library. So there's likely a library near you. We, in thinking about our keynotes talk, this is something that everyone invests in, is our public libraries. And what is really cool about that is you can get such a big return on your investment by utilizing the services that we provide. Of course, when you think of libraries, you think about books and materials. Of course, like everybody else, we've transitioned to an online space, but we are also open to the public, all of our libraries, Tuesday through Saturday. And so you can check us out at kcls.org to find out when we are open. I did want to call attention to some programs that we offer for immigrants, refugees, new arrivals, and small business owners, and really is open to anyone. You aren't charged for any of our services because, of course, we've all invested as a community already. The Welcoming Center is a welcoming space for immigrants and refugees, where we provide resource navigation to social services, social connections, as well as financial services. I do want to call out that we offer certifications in Microsoft Office, Adobe, small business, QuickBooks. You can earn a certification from home and do an online proctored exam to get that certification. Find financial assistance is just that. If you're looking for resources, we are information specialists. That is what we do. And so you can reach out to us, fill out a form. We provide services in different languages. So definitely check that out. We also offer small business counseling and coaching through partnerships. And your next job is really about helping folks navigate job seeking as well as unemployment. So I hope when you think about the libraries, you think of us as much more as partners, that you support us by utilizing services, by telling us what your needs are, and also look to us as collaborators in community projects. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Joe. Joe is another one of our founding members of the Enterprise Welcome Group. So thank you for being here today. Next, I don't know if we have Martha here available to present with our change in shifting that we've had to do today. But if you are here, Martha, I'll give a moment for you to come on as I talk a little bit about welcoming Kirkland. And
Can you hear me?
Yeah, go right ahead, Martha.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Debbie. And thanks to everyone for participating in this program. I'm Martha Chaudhry. I'm with the City of Kirkland, doing special projects in economic development and arts and culture. And I just will talk a little bit about some of the efforts we've made to support small businesses, particularly small businesses who were disproportionately affected by the pandemic. One of the things we're doing is participating actually with Eastside for All, as well as our chamber, in a grant process called Welcoming Economies, which is part of Welcoming Cities. And we were one of 5 cities selected nationwide to participate in this kind of peer mentorship group training and pilot project. And our team collaboratively noted during the pandemic with clarity that there are sectors of our business community that were not well served by services and experienced barriers to support and funding. And so our pilot project with Welcoming Economies is focused on working with a selected business community and beginning with building relationships and just really trying to understand how we can better serve that community through our policies and support services. So our goal eventually is to create a pilot of service for various immigrant communities in our small business ecosystem and provide in-language services. So we're very, very interested in the navigator efforts that are going on in the region and super active, trying to participate in that really, really necessary network. Just a couple of other quick efforts that the city is involved in. During the pandemic, we created a digital marketplace for our businesses, just creating a really low barrier way that small companies could access e-commerce and no contact transactions. And I think I will stop there to give airtime to others, but thank you so much for including us in this wonderful program. Thanks, Debbie.
Thank you, Martha. Next up, we have, I believe, Mohammed from MCNA. Mohammed, are you here still?
Yes, thank you, Debbie. Assalamu alaikum, peace be upon you. I'm Mohammed Bakr, the founder and executive director of MCNA, Muslim Community Network Association. And MCNA, we work to empower the Muslim community in the East Side. We started in the East Side, and when after COVID-19, we expanded to the whole Washington, working currently with more than 40 Islamic centers to do the vaccine side, empower the community, and do a lot of business support. In MCNA, our actions, what we did last year, we built a Muslim business directory to support more than 600 business owners in Washington, and the website, I will send it to you now, guys. It's called muslimwad.com. And after we did this, we found that a lot of community members reached out and they said, can we have something similar, business directory for the BIPOC community? And currently we're working in a new website for the BIPOC community in the East Side, which will be also a business directory for BIPOC business owners in the East Side. MCNA and MCNA focus on outreach, education, civic engagement, Muslim ethnic media, and also the small business support. I'd like also to mention that working together and building on a really authentic relationship is the only way we can go against hate and bias and building a beloved community. And we always support you, Debbie, and everyone here. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Mohammed, always. Next, our next guest is, I believe, Samuel Rodriguez from Biz Diversity. Samuel, welcome. And welcome back from afar. You are back in the area now. We appreciate having you here.
Hello there. Thank you, Debbie. Sorry, I did not click on you promoting me to a presenter. So I'm sorry that I know what to give right now the video. So Biz Diversity, we have been in business for about 10 years. We had an organization company that looked to evolve the Department of Diversity, Equity and Inclusion for small and mid-sized companies, solopreneurs, mom and pop, BIPOC community and businesses. We've been in business for about 10 years. We currently work in development of tools, tactics, and techniques that the organization and small business are implementing, so they also can capture what big corporations and government are obtaining, which is about 30% more increase in revenue. In our side, we have multiple different types of services going from what you see, consulting for DEI, digital marketing, IT managed services targeted to the inclusion ways for presenting incentives that allows your company to acquire new markets and demographics that you would like to business differentiate into. Also translation services. And our directory have grown to 20,000 companies worldwide. We are implementing multiple you may say, locations. One of those is Colombia that I am coming from. I've been there for about 10 months, implementing a bilingual markets at the moment. Out of that, we have membership, events, and sponsorships that allows your company to, or business organization to acquire new markets with the intention to present inclusive and as well the equitable solutions. An opportunity in business, it is to actually come to action. We are a company that practices inclusion and promote diversity. And on that, we're looking to integrate to multiple communities the ability to bring together intergenerational education with BIPOC communities and the moment that increase the reliability of the message that can have to be across between older and younger generations. And that allows easier flow of communication and changes that they need to be made within the economy for the businesses that we target to change as well.
Thank you, sorry, Samuel. I'm so sorry I have to interrupt you just to make sure with our shifts today that we get to everyone. But thank you all so much. Your link has been posted in the chat, and do encourage all of you to check out more about Biz Diversity. They have grown phenomenally in our community, and it's just great to have that partnership. Really appreciate Samuel and Biz Diversity for their support for this event today as well. And with that, I want to turn it over to, I believe, Christina. Is that right? With OneEastside and Spark, or whoever will be presenting for OneEastside. We'll just give a moment here. OneEastside is one of our key partners for this event and has been just such a great resource for us to have locally as we explore more ways to connect our communities of color, our business owners, with all the different resources in our cities. And it's just a great extensive amount of resources and partnership. Anyone here from OneEastside?
In the chat, she says she doesn't have access to her camera.
Yeah, I see that. I'm so sorry. Let's see if we can get that up here in just a moment for you to be able to present. Apologies for that. While we're getting that settled, hopefully soon, did want to just point out something I shared a little bit earlier. So due to the earlier incident today, I'm not going to post our online community board here in the chat, just out of a precautionary measure, but I do want you all to know that there's a really great community board that we worked hard to present to you, and that will be shared later so that you can have all the resources shared today, lots of details, including very important calls to action that each of our presenters is sharing with you all today, and you'll have the opportunity to also share your additional resources and information there. So please stay tuned for that. And I also wanted to share that we will be having follow-up events around these topics and kind of putting into action some of the things that we've talked about today to engage with all of you, and most importantly, our small business owners of color and our community leaders of color working to advance equity and economic development. So we will continue on with that and future events. And with that, I believe we may have Christina available.
I think I'm on audio. Can you hear me? I don't have a camera button, but I think you can hear me. Is that correct?
We can hear you, Christina. Thank you for being here, and go right ahead.
All right. Well, I wish I could see you all. And I just wanted to tell everyone that I'm so thankful for the opportunity to be here today, as the conversations we are having are so pivotal to our economic recovery. My name is Christina Hudson. I'm CEO of One Redmond and founding partner of OneEastside. And over the last year, our OneEastside team has helped thousands of businesses and their owners navigate their way through all the opportunities for local and federal financial assistance. And thanks to a recent federal grant, we were able to amplify our programs and expand our services to create OneEastside Spark, a Center for Resilience and Innovation. And this new initiative now provides additional essential support to small businesses and nonprofit organizations in East King County as they continue to recover and build resiliency. And through our work over the last year and a half, it has been clearly evident that more resources are needed to reach and to support our underserved small businesses and nonprofits. And this summer, One Redmond worked with many of our community partners to work to create an initial framework that, if funded appropriately, will help support these efforts and to help support our community organizations. And just this last week, I'm so proud of our team. We piloted our first webinar that was simulcast in 8 languages. And this program included a line-by-line walkthrough of applications that we also had translated in all these languages for the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, which provides long-term loans and small grants to organizations that have been impacted by the pandemic. And we hope that this is just the first of many resources that we can make available so that everyone in our community has access to it. And with that, I turn it back over to you, Debbie.
Thank you so much, Christina. I'm excited to see what comes next too. There's been some great things happening and good relationship building, and thank you and OneEastside as well for that. Well, at this time, I would like to introduce our guest speaker, Prem Kumar. Prem is the CEO and co-founder of Humanly, an AI platform that empowers hiring teams to be better at the candidate conversations that should remain human-driven while automating the ones that shouldn't. And previously, Prem led the product management and design teams at Tiny Pulse, an employee engagement company that empowers organizations to build world-class cultures with real-time people data. And I wish I knew more about all of that, but thank goodness for people like Prem who devote their careers to these kind of technology advancements. Prem spent 10 years at Microsoft working in a variety of product capacities, HR technology, new ventures, Dynamics 365 and Office 365. And Prem has been recognized as the top 100 HR influencer by HR Weekly and a Forbes Next 1000 honoree. Please help me welcome Prem Kumar. Prem, thank you for staying and being here with us.
Thank you so much for having me, and what a great introduction. I will share my screen. Let me see. Yep. Let me know when we are all good there.
It looks like it's coming up. Yep, you're all set.
Perfect. Well, first off, thank you so much for having me. I mean, this is such a wonderful group of folks. I think the interruption at the beginning was definitely a reminder that we all have work to do, and that's exactly why we're here today. So I feel honored and proud to be a part of this group, particularly as someone who grew up in Kirkland and spent a lot of time at the Kirkland Library. Went to high school at International School in Kirkland, so grew up on the East Side. The topic I'll be talking about today is really the broader topic is, of course, around equitable economic development. My specific area is more focused on hiring, engaging, and retaining our people. So my company focuses on helping people have more equitable and efficient conversations with job candidates. So we can measure things like, with one of our customers, we found junior female candidates were getting 7 minutes less to speak in an interview than the male counterpart. So how do we make those conversations with job candidates more efficient and more equitable? I'll give a little background just so you know kind of my context and where I'm coming from. There's a wonderful bio at the beginning, so I'll make this quick, but spent some time at Microsoft. One of the things I was proud of there is we built a reverse mentoring program so that folks who are BIPOC or diverse in other ways had a chance to mentor senior leaders that eventually turned into a gender equity mentorship program. So junior female workers at Microsoft were able to mentor senior leaders as to how to create systems that were more equitable, inclusive, and created a sense of belonging. Went to a company called Tiny Pulse, again, focused on employee engagement, and now find myself as CEO and co-founder of Humanly. Really excited to be working with a lot of great Seattle companies. So the topics I'll focus on today, kind of within my space, are how hiring is changing. We're moving to a point in time where people are finally realizing that more diverse teams are better teams. But how do we do more than just create diverse candidate pools, but how do we create inclusive environments, equitable environments, and create that sense of belonging, which really starts with the first conversation that you're having with your job candidates. I'll talk a little bit about what's happening right now with the workforce shortage. Of course, that's certainly top of mind. We work with a lot of companies here in Seattle, like the Seattle Storm, SeaTac Airport, Microsoft and are really learning about kind of what's happening right now, and also how technology can play a part in making things more equitable and efficient. There's also a lot of downsides of areas where if you already have a broken system, technology might just help you be more efficient at being broken. So it's very important that you have those structural things in place before you bring technology into the equation. But I'll talk a little bit more, particularly again, as it has to do with talent acquisition, hiring, employee engagement. And I'll give you a list of tools that you can use that will help reduce bias in interviewing. Many of you might already be aware of some of them that will even measure. Like right now, I'm catching myself at the speed at which I'm speaking. If I was speaking at this speed in a job interview, it would disadvantage candidates where English is a second language, and their cognition would go down by about 10 to 20%. So there's a lot of things we can now measure that we couldn't before. So to help us be more inclusive, help us be more equitable, and create that sense of belonging. And I will leave some time for questions, and feel free, Debbie, to give me a warning if I'm going over a little bit. I know we have a shortened schedule. So what are we seeing? So there's certainly a lot of specific things happening now, but generally over the last several years, we've seen the workforce become more fluid and flexible. Not all jobs allow the privilege of working from home, but there is more of a sense of a gig economy. We're seeing reskilling becoming more common. So my dad, for instance, had a great career. He was at Boeing for about 30 years. And at that time, it would have been impossible for him to, take his engineering skill set from Boeing and then all of a sudden switch over to maybe a computer science engineering path. But we are seeing with technology, with training, it's becoming easier to reskill. We're also seeing that candidate pools are more diverse. They're diverse geographically as well, and there's a lot of things to be considered there. The second piece is, I really feel that we're hitting a point where folks are beginning to realize that, and of course folks here, but in the general systems here, that more diverse teams are better teams. They're more representative of their customers. They're able to test products better. So we are seeing a move in talent acquisition to diversity by design. And then the last piece, I'll skip some of the jargon here, but really a lot of the HR tools in the past have been used, or talent acquisition tools have been used to, of course, find candidates, to track them, but to track them through the process, but not to help you get better at those direct conversations you're having with your candidates, which there's a lot to be said there, particularly in labor shortages like this. Can you get out to people quickly? Can you create accessible experiences? Can you conversate in ways that are inclusive? And this is a little bit of a drill down into some of the trends that I was talking about, but really where we see the workplace is kind of between 2.0 and 3.0. So we're beginning to see, again, movement, bigger gig economies for some jobs, remote first teams. One other thing that's really standing out is candidate experience in a level playing field is at the center. Companies are realizing that their candidates are oftentimes their best customers. So the average Disney job candidate spends 8 times as much money at Disney as the average consumer. So if you're not treating your candidates well in an inclusive way, an equitable way, you're not just missing out on great employees, you're also missing bottom line. Verizon Media did a study saying they lose $6 million a year because candidates that have a bad experience will actually switch to a competitor. So, not just, it's certainly the right thing to do, but it also to be inclusive and to create these systems, but it's also affecting bottom line, and companies are taking notice. So really excited to see some changes happening there. We are seeing certainly workforce shortages. I was traveling recently and ordering pizza, and then there just wasn't enough drivers at Domino's to deliver pizza to the hotel I was at. This is a very complex thing, and I'm not qualified to speak on all these topics, but there's a lot that goes into what's happening from a workforce shortage standpoint right now. Certainly affordable housing and access to retail, accessible transportation, being able to get your job, livable wages. the area that I've spent most of my time on is that fourth one. So workplace culture and hiring. And I'm excited to go deeper in that and then learn from this group as it relates to some of these other areas. And then the other kind of thing that is hit really hard right now, of course, the pandemic has caused a lot of things to happen. And, you know, we've seen some jobs move to remote. We're seeing, prioritization around treating people right. If you have 200 people apply to your job, this, of course, is less common now with the labor shortage, but you have 200 opportunities to really create goodwill for your brand. But a couple of things, those last two bullets, we are seeing that our customers, employers, as well as candidates are really valuing safety, more security, psychological safety, and designing for that business resilience. So I think incorporating that into your interview process is very important, and it definitely affects people of color, people that are gender diverse in different ways. I was, when we were building our product, I interviewed someone that was had autism spectrum disorder, and we can measure how much time is spent on small talk in an interview. And small talk's a great icebreaker, but he was unfairly disadvantaged against because other candidates were spending 5 minutes in small talk and he wasn't equipped to engage in that way. So a lot of how we show up when we're talking to our candidates can create safety scenarios. It can detract from safety. So it is really important. I really, a lot of us have seen a lot of articles out there about the future of work. It really is now, and it is a good opportunity to adapt and adjust. What we're seeing with our customers is they're coming back online and hiring. They're really coming forward with a new approach. They're not looking to go back to the same old ways of doing things. And with that brings tremendous opportunity, again, to be inclusive, to be equitable. Another thing that is happening now is there's more money being invested by venture capital in HR technology and talent acquisition technology than we've ever seen. So last quarter, it's been skyrocketing. There's lots of companies that are getting money to create solutions. And what that means for us as buyers is that we will be bombarded by lots of different solutions, and not all of them are solving the problems we want them to. This is a separate talk, but if anyone is interested, I'm always happy to share what questions to ask vendors before, as you're thinking about, is this something that's going to help really make our hiring process better? But there's a lot of activity and a lot of money being put in for the first time ever into this tech that helps with talent acquisition, helps with HR. I'll talk a little bit about, just how we engage with our candidates, how we engage with our employees, how we engage with our alumni. And really, it kind of does come down to, no matter how much technology is out there, this is a human-driven process, and technology should be helping make it more human-driven. This is a quote from Jeff Bezos, and he says, "We see our customers as invited guests to a party, and we are the hosts. It's our job every day to make every important aspect of the customer experience a little better." And while I agree with Jeff, of course, at the same time, this is how we need to be treating our candidates. So if you just replace the word customers with candidates, we need to be thinking about, how we're structuring these processes to be accessible, to be inclusive. And then the same goes to our employees, the same goes to our alumni. So how can we use technology to show up better for these folks? And here's some of the ways that we're seeing that kind of manifest. So retention and recruiting are really becoming more interconnected. I'll share some data on this, but there's actually a little calculator here I can send over later, but it helps you calculate, how much are you losing from a hard cost standpoint because of retention. And retention is not just keeping people physically working for you, but their mind share there. Are they engaged? There's research by Dr. Brooks Holtum out of Georgetown suggesting that the worst employee outcome from an employer is not when your top performers leave you. It's actually, when you have reluctant stayers. So people that might stay there, but they're not engaged. So what can we do to really keep people engaged, as well as to keep them there? There's a lot of signals we're seeing that influence retention. So really screening, but not just screening candidates out, screening them in. So how do you elevate those candidates that would be great fits? And how do you give them the information they need in a very quick manner, especially with this labor shortage? Give them the information they need to move forward in the process. Can you get them that info so they know that they're making the right decision, moving them through? A lot more is happening around measuring candidate sentiment. So what topics are we talking about in our interviews, and are they causing candidates to, have higher sentiment, lower sentiment? We see a lot of proximity bias come into play. So if it's a Seattle-based hiring team and they're interviewing another candidate in Seattle, they actually spend much more time on small talk. Not that this is bad, but they'll talk about the Seahawks, which is great. But by the time they get to the actual questions, they have far less time versus when they're interviewing a candidate that's out of market, that they don't have that proximity bias towards. So how do we be consistent? How do we really treat each candidate conversation in a consistent manner? And then, how can this data be used to elevate our brand? Because at the end of the day, your employer brand is your brand as a company. So I'll talk now a little bit about how technology can help, and I will give some, some real examples of what I'm seeing, not just with our tool, but with other technologies out there. Of course, artificial intelligence has been talked about a lot as a way of engaging at scale with candidates. There's a study done by Accenture saying that 81% of companies who embrace AI saw 10% growth. But on the flip side of it, you're also seeing research from Forbes saying that 65% of companies have not seen business gains from AI investment. So you have some folks that, feel that investing in this type of technology will really help, particularly with talent acquisition and employee engagement. Others that say it won't. And then you have folks that say, this is studies from Europe, but it definitely applies to the US as well, where, 40% of startups that say they're using AI aren't actually using AI. So really, I think it really starts with what problems are you looking to solve? Are you looking for a more diverse applicant pool? Are you looking to be more inclusive in your interviews? Are you looking to engage with people much more quickly? So it really starts with a problem, and artificial intelligence could be one solution. And there are various ways it can help, but I do think with any technology, just being hyper vigilant now, because there's a lot of money being pumped into these new technologies, and in many ways the tech is moving faster than the laws can keep up with or the ethics can keep up with. So it's very important to be really careful here. But there are huge benefits potentially with AI in talent acquisition and employee engagement. One is just the amount of time savings. So if you have a high volume, you want to be able to engage. You want to be able to have those repetitive tasks automated so you can really show up for the direct conversations better. Quality, so reducing time to first touch and time to hire, creating a better experience for candidates. And then the last piece is around reducing unconscious bias. You can't change what you can't measure, and there's a lot more we can measure now about how we're interviewing, what words we're using in our job descriptions. Are we accidentally unfairly biasing against certain types of folks? And some of the traditional patterns that people use are not working anymore. So I've interviewed interviewers that will say, they base confidence sometimes on things like eye contact and gestures, which makes sense. But when I go out and interview someone who is sight impaired, they might have gestures and eye contact behavior that's a little bit different. So I think really being aware of how we're showing up begins to be even more important. So I'll now take you through, and again, Debbie, let me know if when we have a time stop here, but I'll quickly take you through some examples of where this is working and how artificial intelligence can be used to remove bias. Job postings, engagement and inclusion, and then direct candidate conversations. On the job posting side, this was a study by ZipRecruiter. Many of us might have seen some of this work, but literally 72% of job listings in the US use masculine gendered words. And if you just change those words to gender neutral, you get 42% more responses. So that's from a gender diversity standpoint. Imagine all the other ways that language is affecting us. I think that the inclusion journey really just start with the job application. Local Seattle company, many of us may have heard of, Textio, will help us really use the right language to really be inclusive and create that sense of belonging. On the engagement and inclusion side, we're still hearing, and this Gallup study was a little older, 85% of employees are not engaged in the workplace. And especially with a labor shortage, you need to maximize what you're getting from the employees you do have. And this was what I alluded to before, but there's a lot of research suggesting that, the folks that are reluctant stayers and might physically be working for you, but not really be committed, in many cases, it's actually worse than folks leaving or not being able to hire someone new. So a lot of it starts from within. How can we really create systems that create engagement, inclusion, belonging? Yep.
Hey, I just wanted to pop in here. Thank you and for allowing me to interrupt when we needed, because we did have one question I want to make sure we get to, and that is, how do you balance screening for job fit with increasing diversity in the workplace with people who don't look or think like the existing culture? That's a big question, I know.
Absolutely. So I look at culture as a roadmap. So it's not a point in time thing. You're not looking for more people that will fit into what you already have. You're looking at where you want to get to and how you need to adapt to get there, and bringing in more diverse voices, bringing in more diverse ways of thinking will help folks get to where they want to be. So I think if you think about it that way, instead of thinking about bringing in pieces that acquiesce to what you've already created, I think that's one way of doing it. And we've worked with a lot of companies that go through an exercise with them around that. As far as screening for job fit, so knowing one thing that's really important is knowing what measures are not necessarily predictive of success. So we found that in some roles, the difference between 4 and 5 years of experience might not be predictive of success, but what is coachability. So don't over-index for the stuff that isn't predictive of success, such as maybe where someone went to school or what their name is. So I think if you're focusing on what you do know leads to success, oftentimes you then don't waste time in shortcuts. And one shortcut is being biased in screening. And I'll stop there. But yeah, that's my quick answer.
Thank you, Prem. And we have lots of people on the call today who I know are connected to HR directors in your institutions, and to the extent that you can pass on this knowledge and information, I think it's a critical time in our community to have more of those voices present, so we can understand what all of our community's needs are and their solutions, and really help make that connection better. And of course, you raised those issues so well, Prem, earlier about just the complexity of this. When we're talking about the workforce shortages, we absolutely have to be talking about affordable housing, affordable retail, transportation accessibility, and also racial discrimination. We have heard from some people that they don't want to come work for XYZ in East King County because they don't feel comfortable. And a lot of that has to do with a culture of that we all need to own and be responsible for, making an environment and a culture that's not just about good schools and good places to live and beautiful parks, but it's about a culture where people feel safe, able to be who they are and to thrive, and where we can continue to attract people from all over the world and all races who want to make their home here in East King County and provide for themselves, their families, and make a contribution to the community. So I really appreciate, Prem, you staying here with us and presenting your information today. Thank you. Everyone give a thank you to Prem with me. And also want to thank all of you. We will continue the conversation as always, and greatly appreciate each way that you all support the conversations to be new and different in these times. Please look around the tables that you sit at and note whose voices are missing, and how can you make a personal connection to include those voices and help lift up the very questions we've been asking here today about what it takes to move forward as a community beyond the crisis that we're currently in, and have something new in place when we get on the other side, wherever that may be, whenever that may be, where we can truly feel like we have done our part individually and in our groups and institutions to create equitable spaces and places where everybody can thrive and succeed. I know all of you want that great intentions and spirit of coming together in a community during Welcoming Week. And I do want to, again, thank you and apologize for those that were here at the beginning of the program and experienced what happened there. Please know that we are working to address that, and we'll put some more safety procedures in place moving forward. But thank you for your time today, for participating in Welcoming Week in other ways that you have been, and most importantly, for paying attention, showing up, and being willing to have some tough conversations and explore new models and new ways of doing things in our community. Please stay connected to the people who shared today, and we will also be sharing some resources with you as follow-up. Thank you all so much, and have a good rest of your day and a good weekend. Thank you.